And firefighters still battling multiple wildfires in the Texas Panhandle today. Mandatory evacuation orders issued for Oldham County and Armstrong County as crews work to contain two massive fires. The lavender fires burned more than 18,000 acres thus far, fueled by strong winds and dry vegetation. Right now, it's only 40% contained. Further to the east, the 8-ball fire is about 70% contained. 13,000 acres burned so far. The flames moving quickly to rural communities and other.
Texas Lake Country, June 2022. A cattle auction that wasn't supposed to last more than 6 hours hit the 24-hour mark. 4,000 animals sold, 200 cows per hour, non-stop. Ranchers showing up in trucks loaded with cattle they couldn't feed anymore. Pastures dead, water supplies gone, feed costs so high that keeping the herd meant bankruptcy. So they sold all night into the next morning. And when the auction finally ended, the ranchers drove home to empty pastures and the realization that the drought forcing them to liquidate wasn't ending anytime soon. That was June 2022, peak drought, the moment when Texas cattle producers admitted they couldn't hold on anymore. 4 years later, it's still happening. February 16, 2026, Governor Greg Abbott renewed his drought disaster proclamation again. The 10th renewal since July 8, 2022. 189 counties under disaster status. The same proclamation, the same language, the same problem that never got solved. Texas ranchers are entering the 6th year of drought, and this time they're not just facing empty pastures and dry wells, they're facing wildfires. Early 2026 already saw multiple fires sparked by bone-dry rangeland across the state. And with La Niña fading, but drought conditions still holding, experts warned the 2026 wildfire season could be catastrophic. From 2020 through 2024, the drought cost Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas agriculture $23.6 billion. Lost crops, higher feed costs, mass cattle sell-offs. Texas's herd declined from 13.1 million to 12 million. Oklahoma dropped from 5.3 million to 4.7 million. Kansas fell from 6.5 million to 6.15 million. And Abbott keeps renewing disaster declarations while ranchers watch their operations collapse and wildfires consume what's left. When the herd never recovered. Texas cattle producers know drought. The 2010 to 2015 drought was brutal. The state herd dropped from 13.3 million in 2011 to 11.1 million in 2014. Ranchers spent years rebuilding, buying heifers, holding back calves, slowly restocking. By 2020, Texas finally hit 13.1 million head again, just below where they'd been before the 2010 drought started. The recovery took a decade. Then spring 2020 came. Flash drought hit western Texas. Rainfall disappeared, temperatures spiked, and ranchers who just finished recovering from one drought found themselves in another. This one didn't end. 2021 stayed dry. 2022 got worse. Peak drought summer 2022 forced the mass sell-off, that 24-hour auction in June, thousands more across Texas. Ranchers liquidating herds they'd spent 10 years rebuilding. By 2024, Texas's herd was down to 12 million, a million head lost in 4 years. And unlike the 2010 to 2015 recovery, this time there's no recovery happening because the drought hasn't ended. Joe Lissenbeeb and William Belay, researchers from University of Colorado Boulder and Texas A&M, published analysis in February 2026 explaining why. Historically, droughts of this magnitude happen in the southern plains about once a decade. But the severe droughts of this century have been lasting longer, leaving water supplies, native rangelands, and farms with little time to recover before the next one hits. Translation: Texas ranchers are getting hit with decade-scale droughts every few years now, and there's no time between them to rebuild. The $23.6 billion nobody talks about. NOAA's National Centers for Environmental Information calculated the economic impact from 2020 through 2024. The drought cost the agriculture industry across Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas $23.6 billion. That's not a projection, that's documented losses. Crops that failed, feed that had to be purchased at inflated prices, cattle sold at auction because ranchers couldn't afford to keep them. In 2022, the peak year, Texas agriculture took the worst hit. 25% of the corn crop was planted but never harvested. 45% of the soybean crop abandoned. 74% of the cotton crop left in fields. A normal Texas cotton season yields $2.4 billion. In 2022, with 74% abandonment, the crop was worth roughly $640 million. That's $1.76 billion lost from cotton alone in 1 year, and ranchers bore the brunt. From 2020 through 2024, Texas lost 1.1 million head of cattle. Oklahoma lost 600,000. Kansas lost 350,000. When ranchers sell off breeding stock during drought, recovery takes years, decades sometimes, because those cows aren't being replaced. Abbott renewed disaster declarations throughout this entire period: July 2022, October 2022, March 2023, December 2025, January 2026, February 2026. Every few months, same proclamation. But disaster declarations don't stop drought, don't refill aquifers, don't bring back cattle herds. They suspend regulations, unlock state resources, give ranchers tax relief on land they can't use, but they don't solve the underlying problem. Texas agriculture just absorbed $23.6 billion in losses over 4 years, and Abbott's solution is to keep signing the same piece of paper over and over, while ranchers tell the state is doing everything it can. When drought turns into wildfire, dry rangeland doesn't just kill cattle, it burns. Early 2026 saw multiple wildfires across Texas, sparked by drought conditions: bone-dry grass, dead vegetation, high winds, low humidity. The combination turns rangelands into tinderboxes. Abbott's February 16th drought proclamation specifically mentioned wildfire danger. The presence of drought conditions in certain counties contributes to increased wildfire danger. That's not a warning, that's a description of what's already happening. And with La Niña fading in early 2026, but drought conditions still holding across the state, fire experts warned the 2026 wildfire season could rival or exceed 2011 and 2022. For ranchers, wildfires don't just destroy property, they destroy livelihoods. A fire that burns through rangeland kills forage that won't recover for years. Fences get destroyed, water infrastructure gets damaged. Cattle that survive the fire often have nothing to eat afterward. And unlike floods or hurricanes that hit fast and leave, drought-fueled wildfires are cumulative. 6 years of dry conditions means 6 years of fuel buildup. Dead grass from 2020, dead brush from 2021, dead trees from 2022, all of it sitting there waiting for a spark. Texas A&M Forest Service tracks burn bans county by county. As of February 2026, dozens of counties remain under burn bans. No outdoor burning, no welding, no activities that could throw sparks because the risk is too high. Abbott's proclamation acknowledges the danger, but acknowledgement doesn't prevent fires. And when they start, ranchers who've already lost cattle to drought face losing what's left to flames. What La Niña means leaving. La Niña dominated weather patterns from 2020 through early 2026. Triple La Niña, meteorologists called it. 3 consecutive La Niña events back-to-back. And La Niña typically brings below-average rainfall and above-average temperatures to the southern plains. That's why the drought lasted so long. La Niña kept the rain away. In early 2026, La Niña faded, and El Niño, its opposite, is potentially on the horizon. El Niño typically brings wetter conditions to Texas and the southern plains. Listenbeeb and Belay noted in their February analysis there's a chance for wetter conditions in fall and winter 2026 that could reduce the drought. But here's the problem. Even if El Niño arrives, even if rain comes, Texas's water resources are so depleted that a few big storms won't fix it. San Antonio's reservoirs hit record lows in 2024 and 2025. The Edwards Aquifer, which supplies water for 2.5 million people, hit record lows. Both were still low as 2026 began. Surface water and groundwater across central and western Texas are depleted to the point that even major storms can't replenish them. It took 6 years to drain these resources. It'll take years of above-average rainfall to refill them. And ranchers don't have years. They need water now. They needed it in 2020. They needed it in 2022. They need it in 2026. And Abbott keeps renewing disaster declarations while the aquifers stay empty. What 6th year looks like. As of February 19, 2026, Texas ranchers are entering the 6th consecutive year of drought. Cattle herds are 1 million head smaller than they were in 2020. Rangelands are stressed, water supplies are depleted, and wildfires are already starting.
Abbott renewed his disaster proclamation on February 16th, same proclamation he's renewed 10 times since July 2022. 189 counties, same language, same suspension of regulations, same promise that the state is doing everything it can. But ranchers who sold their herds at that 24-hour auction in June 2022 are still out of business. Cattle they sold aren't coming back. Operations they shut down didn't reopen. And the ranchers still hanging on. They're watching forecasts